I was never supposed to live in a palace. My life had always been quiet, almost invisible, a gentle rhythm of simplicity. I grew up folding flower paper instead of couture, arranging daisies and wild lavender while others chased diamonds and designer shoes. My aunt's flower shop was where I spent most of my days, barefoot behind the counter, hands dusted with pollen, humming to the old radio as sunlight poured through the dusty windows. We weren't rich, but we were safe. We had warmth and laughter, and meals made with care. And I would have been happy if things stayed that way forever. But fate doesn't ask what you want. It barges in, dressed in silk and steel, and rewrites your story without permission. The day he came into our home, it was like a storm cloaked in silence. I remember the sound of the engine first, low, powerful, too clean for our narrow street. Then the knock on the door, not tentative, but deliberate, measured, as if whoever stood behind it was used to the world answering. When I opened it, I saw 3 men in suits. The one in front, tall, imposing, impossibly poised, stepped forward and introduced himself as Heir Al-Fayed. I didn't recognize the name. Not right away. To me, he looked more like a shadow sculpted in marble than a man. Eyes unreadable, posture commanding, everything about him screaming power. The other 2 men with him didn't speak. They didn't have to. They were there to watch, to intimidate, to reinforce what was already clear. This man was here for something, and he wasn't leaving without it. He didn't waste time. "I'm here with a proposal," he said to my uncle. "It concerns your niece." My heart dropped. My breath caught dot. I wasn't even invited to the conversation about my future. They spoke in another room while I waited, frozen, staring at the vase of sunflowers I'd arranged that morning, their cheerful yellow suddenly looking out of place in the heavy stillness that had settled in the house. When my uncle returned, he looked pale, awed, and terrified. He sat me down and explained everything as if it were a blessing. A miracle, even. Heir, heir to the Al-Fayed empire, oil, finance, shipping, old money that flowed through borders and centuries, was under pressure to produce an heir. Not just from the media, but from his mother, a woman known for her iron grip over the family legacy. He didn't want a wife in the traditional sense. He wanted a vessel, a contract, a controlled future. He had done his research, apparently. Chosen me, a quiet, humble girl with no scandals, no enemies, no name worth leveraging on purpose. "You'll be provided for," my uncle said. "Your children will never want for anything. You'll be part of history." I felt like I couldn't breathe, like I was sinking while everyone around me clapped for my drowning. "I don't even know him," I whispered. "You'll get to know each other," he replied, eyes darting away. "There are worse things in life than being a queen." Queen? I wasn't even sure I was still a person in this equation. Within 3 days, the papers were signed. A dowry was transferred. The media, what little they were allowed to see, spun it as a fairy tale. A mysterious young woman selected to become the wife of a billionaire. Headlines read, "From florist to royalty." They didn't mention that I wasn't even asked what I wanted. The wedding was scheduled in less than 2 weeks. I wasn't allowed to choose the dress. It arrived in a garment bag with a handwritten note from Heir's mother, modest, elegant, silent. I didn't choose the guest list. My aunt cried when she found out she wouldn't be invited. "It's a matter of optics," they told her. "Everything must appear curated." I stood in front of a mirror in a ballroom the size of a train station, wearing a gown that didn't belong to me, surrounded by strangers with champagne glasses and shark smiles. Heir stood beside me like a sculpture in a museum, untouched, unmoved. He didn't look at me when he said his vows. He didn't touch me when we cut the cake. He didn't speak to me on our wedding night. Instead, after we were escorted to the royal suite, he poured himself a glass of something amber, loosened his tie, and said in a low voice, "You'll have everything you need. But don't expect affection. This marriage is not about love." Then he turned his back and disappeared behind a curtain of velvet and shadow. I sat on the edge of a silk-covered bed, the scent of perfume and unfamiliarity making my head spin. And I didn't cry. Because even though I felt like a possession passed from one owner to another, even though the girl I had once been was slowly disappearing beneath layers of gold and expectation, I still held on to one truth. If he thought I would stay invisible forever, he had no idea who he just married. The palace was beautiful, but it felt nothing like a home. The walls were ivory and gold, lined with portraits of ancestors who stared down at me like I was an intruder. Every chandelier sparkled with opulence. Every hallway echoed with silence. I remember the first morning after the wedding. I woke alone. Heir was gone, long before sunrise, I was told. A discreet staff member informed me that His Excellency had early meetings and that I wouldn't see him until the evening. That became a pattern. Zahir didn't dine with me. He didn't ask how I was settling in. He didn't speak to me unless absolutely necessary. And when he did, it was always with the same tone he used with his employees, polite, controlled, detached. I was given a wing of the palace to myself. Rooms I never requested. Jewelry I never wore. Gowns I never asked for. They dressed me like a queen, but spoke to me like a ghost. But the part of the palace that felt the coldest wasn't made of marble. It was his mother, Lady Samira Al-Fayed. She had the grace of a queen and the soul of an executioner. Our first meeting was on the second morning. I was escorted to her private salon, where she sat draped in royal blue silk, sipping coffee from a porcelain cup that looked older than my childhood home. She didn't stand when I entered. She didn't smile. She just stared at me long and hard, and then finally said, "You're quieter than I expected." "That is good." I didn't know how to respond, so I nodded slightly. She gestured to the seat across from her, but didn't offer food, or water, or warmth. Only silence. Then she asked, "Do you understand your purpose here?" My stomach twisted. "Yes, ma'am," I said carefully. She nodded once. "Good. Then let's not pretend this is anything more than it is. You will provide an heir, preferably a son. If you do this, you will be respected and well cared for. If you do not," her voice trailed off like the end of a threat she didn't need to finish. The message was clear. This wasn't a family. It was an empire. And I was a vessel. I returned to my suite that day in silence, but something in me had started to churn. I wasn't stupid. I knew I had been chosen not despite my simplicity, but because of it. I was easy to mold, easy to hide, easy to forget when the cameras were gone and the heir was born. But I was also beginning to realize something else. They thought I was a flower. Delicate, decorative, silent. But flowers bloom. And sometimes, they grow thorns. I began to memorize the rhythm of the palace. The way the servants would disappear when Zahir walked by. The way the halls would go dead silent every time his mother entered a room. The way I was constantly watched, but never spoken to unless it was about schedules, doctors, or appearances. It was like being a display piece in a museum no one visited. But then something changed. Her name was Mina, a junior maid from the servants' quarters, barely older than me. She was quiet, careful, but there was something in her eyes that felt human. She never flinched when I looked at her, never avoided my gaze like the others did. One evening, after yet another stiff dinner alone, I returned to my suite to find a small bundle of jasmine on my pillow. No note, just the scent of something kind in a place that had none. The next day, when I asked who left it, the staff froze. But that night, Mina slipped into my room quietly while everyone slept. "Forgive me," she whispered. "I shouldn't have, but you looked so lonely." I could have dismissed her, followed the rules, been the obedient, invisible wife they expected. Instead, I took her hand. "You're the first person to speak to me like I'm real," I said softly. From then on, she became the only warmth I knew. She taught me how to navigate the palace without being seen. Which corridors to avoid, which guards were sympathetic, which of the royal advisors were whispering about my usefulness behind my back. Through Mina, I learned the palace was not made of stone and gold. It was built on secrets. And I was being watched. My meals were monitored. My health was tracked. Even the medical visits they arranged were never about me. They were about my womb. How soon? How viable? How quickly I could fulfill the contract sealed between our families. One night, as I lay awake in the silence, I stared up at the ceiling and made a vow. I won't be forgotten. I won't just be the mother of an heir. I will be me, whether they like it or not. That week, I requested to speak with Zahir. Face to face. No assistants. No advisors. Just him and me. When he arrived at my suite, sharp suit, colder eyes, he raised an eyebrow. "Is there an issue?" he asked, already impatient. I stood tall. "Yes, there is. I didn't agree to be treated like a machine. If you want an heir, you'll treat me with basic dignity first. I'm not asking for love, but I am a person." He blinked. Just once. As if he hadn't expected defiance. But I didn't flinch. For the first time, I saw a crack in the marble mask. It was small, but it was there. And I knew then I wasn't powerless. Not anymore. After that conversation, something shifted. Zahir didn't respond with anger. He didn't raise his voice or storm out. He simply stared at me, for longer than he ever had before, then gave a single nod and left the room in silence. The next morning, I found my schedule had changed. No more surprise doctor visits. No more controlled nutrition plans. Instead, a note arrived from his assistant, short, polite. His Excellency has asked that you be allowed full access to the gardens and West Wing. A driver will be at your disposal if you wish to leave the palace. It wasn't affection, but it was freedom. And in this place, that felt revolutionary. I started to walk the palace grounds, alone, slowly reclaiming my breath. The gardens were vast and beautiful, with flowering hedges that reminded me of home, though nothing here ever truly felt like mine. But there was peace in the wind, and peace, however temporary, was a beginning. Then, one evening, Zahir appeared at the edge of the garden. No guards, no entourage, just him. I froze, unsure of what to do. He spoke first. You said something to me the other day, he said. No one has spoken to me like that in years. There was no menace in his voice, no pride, just something tired, something real. I didn't mean to insult you, I replied, keeping my tone careful. But I won't be erased. He nodded, slowly, like he understood. We walked in silence. For the first time, I noticed he wasn't just intimidating, he was exhausted. There were shadows beneath his eyes that not even money could hide. The weight of a kingdom, perhaps, or something older. After a moment, he said, my father ruled through fear. My mother through control. I never had the luxury of softness. It wasn't an apology, but it was something close. Over the next few weeks, things continued to shift slowly, like ice thawing under sunlight. Zahir began to dine with me once a week. He asked questions, listened, sometimes, never smiled, but he watched closely. One night, he found me in the library. I was curled up on a window seat, reading an old poetry book that belonged to his grandmother. He didn't interrupt, just stood near the shelves, pretending to browse. Eventually, I looked up. You don't have to hover, I said. I wasn't, he replied, then paused. I like this room. It used to be my sanctuary, before everything became performance. That word, sanctuary, stayed with me. For the first time, I realized he might be just as much a prisoner of this place as I was. Caged by expectations. Dressed in armor so long he forgot how to bleed. I didn't trust him yet, but I didn't hate him anymore. And somehow, in the silence we shared that night, something gentle passed between us. Not love. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of understanding. Just when I started to breathe freely, the palace reminded me who it belonged to. It began with whispers. At first, harmless, snippets of servants' chatter, easily ignored. She's just a placeholder. They say he'll replace her after the heir is born. His mother already picked another woman. I tried to let it go. I wanted to believe they were wrong. That Zahir was beginning to see me as more than just a name on a document. But then I heard it from someone who didn't have a reason to lie. Mina. She came to me late one night, pale, trembling. They're making arrangements, she whispered. Your medical files, someone accessed them. There's talk that if you don't conceive soon, they'll annul the marriage. Quietly, respectfully, but permanently. I felt the blood drain from my face. And Zahir? I asked, my voice hoarse. She hesitated. Then, finally. I don't think he knows. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the cold marble floor of my room, staring at the fire until it burned low, trying to process what it meant, what I meant. Was I still just a function to them? Had I ever been more? The next morning, I asked to see Zahir. When he arrived, I didn't wait for pleasantries. Do you plan to discard me if I don't give you a child? I asked bluntly. He stiffened. Where did you hear that? Does it matter? Is it true? His eyes darkened, not with guilt, but frustration. You think I have control over everything in this place? That I move the strings of every decision? You forget who raised me, Layla. My mother doesn't ask. She commands. Then why don't you stop her? I snapped. You're the head of this empire. No, he said quietly. I'm the product of it. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. I realized then how deep the route went. That even Zahir, with all his wealth and title, was still a marionette dancing on inherited strings. But I also realized something else. If I didn't fight for myself, no one would. I stood. Then I won't wait for permission. If I'm to be replaced, let it be by my terms, not hers. He looked stunned. Almost hurt. But I didn't wait for his answer. Because this time, I wasn't asking. I didn't pack my bags. I didn't scream, or cry, or storm out. Instead, I did the one thing the palace feared most. I stood my ground. I began waking up early, walking the halls where I wasn't expected, speaking to staff members the royals never addressed. I learned names, listened to stories, built quiet alliances. And in doing so, I started to reclaim power, one quiet step at a time. I began attending public charity events in Zahir's name, without his mother's approval. I spoke with the press, gave soft interviews, showed the world the palace's new queen wasn't just a face beside a man in a suit. She had a voice. And she used it. I saw Lady Samira's reaction during the first event, when photos of me visiting a children's hospital went viral. She stared at the screen, face still, jaw tight, fingers twitching slightly over her pearls. She summoned me, of course. The moment I stepped into her salon, I knew what was coming. "You are overstepping," she hissed. "You were not chosen to lead. You were chosen to serve a function, quietly." I didn't flinch. "With all due respect, ma'am," I said, calm but firm, "you didn't choose me. Your son did. And whether you like it or not, I'm here now. And I will not be erased." Her lips tightened. Her eyes, for the first time, filled with something close to fear. Not because I was dangerous, but because I was no longer compliant. Later that evening, I returned to my suite and found Zahir waiting. He stood by the window, watching the palace lights flicker in the distance. "You met with my mother," he said quietly. "She threatened me." He turned. For once, there was no mask, no walls. "And what did you say?" "I told her the truth," I replied. "That I'm not leaving. That I'm more than just your heir's mother." There was a beat of silence. Then he said, "You are." At first, I thought he meant the mother of my child. But then I saw his eyes. The softness. The clarity. "You are more than what they see. I see it now." He stepped forward. Slowly. Carefully. Not like a man claiming property, but like someone asking for permission to get closer. "Layla," he said, voice low. "I was raised to believe love was weakness. But you make me want to unlearn everything I was taught." I didn't move. My heart thundered. My breath caught. But I didn't move away. Because somewhere in that cold palace, something warm had started to grow. And for once, it wasn't just survival. It was the beginning of something real. For a while, things were quiet. Almost too quiet. Zahir and I had reached an unspoken understanding. He no longer treated me like a contract. I no longer treated him like a cage. We shared dinners, books, long walks in the garden. Nothing too intimate. Nothing rushed. But real. Then the letter came. A thick, cream-colored envelope delivered by hand. No return address. No crest. Just a name, written in shaky black ink. Layla Hassan, my full name. I opened it slowly. And what I found inside shattered the fragile peace I'd built. Photos. Dozens of them. Me. Before the wedding, walking hand in hand with someone from my past. A man I had once loved. Someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Captions scribbled in red ink accused me of deception, infidelity, betrayal. "Zahir deserves the truth," one line read. "She was never pure. She played you all." My chest turned to ice. It was a lie. Twisted fragments of an old life. Repackaged, retold, reimagined. But I knew exactly who had sent it. Lady Samira. She hadn't broken me through silence. So now she was trying to break me through shame. I took the letter straight to Zahir. He read it without flinching. His face remained still, but I could see the storm behind his eyes. "Do you believe this?" I asked, barely able to breathe. "No," he said after a long pause. "But it doesn't matter what I believe. My mother will make it matter." That night, I waited. I expected the guards, the advisors, the announcement that my contract was void, that I would be escorted out quietly, my name struck from the family history. But instead, Zahir stood before a room full of press the next morning and did something no one expected. He told the truth. My wife was chosen by circumstance, but she remained by choice. She has shown more integrity, strength, and grace than anyone in this family, including myself. The palace gasped. The reporters stammered. His mother stormed out before he finished. But I stayed, frozen in the doorway, listening. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just survival anymore. This was love. And it had just declared war on everything that tried to bury it. The days after Zahir's public declaration were chaos. The palace shook. Not physically, but socially, politically. His mother withdrew from public view, retreating to one of the family's older estates under the guise of health concerns. But everyone knew the truth. She had lost control. And people like her don't know how to exist without it. Zahir refused to speak with her. He cut ties, not just in words, but in legacy, appointing a new council, dissolving the old traditions that had imprisoned generations of women like me. He didn't do it for me. He did it for himself. But I was the reason he finally could. One morning, he came to me with no entourage, no ceremony, just a quiet look in his eyes and a small box in his hand. No pressure, he said. No expectations. This isn't royal. This is real. Inside was a simple ring, a silver band, etched with my name in Arabic. He hadn't given me a ring at our wedding. Only documents, arrangements. But this time, it wasn't about contracts. It was about choice. I said yes, not because I needed saving, not because he'd changed, but because I had. I was no longer the girl who waited behind shop windows. I wasn't the quiet bride they dressed in borrowed gold. I had faced the most powerful people in this empire and refused to bow. And in doing so, I became powerful myself. Months later, I returned to my aunt's old flower shop. She had retired, but I reopened it, not for income, but for memory, for peace. Zahir visits sometimes. He wears linen instead of silk now, laughs easier, stays longer. Sometimes we talk about the past. Sometimes we don't. But every time I see him walk through the door, I remember the girl I used to be. And I smile, because she never disappeared. She just needed a reason to rise.